Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm not.
All right, very excited. We are entering the NBA bubble. Mark Medina is in the NBA bubble for USA Today. So you're in your room. Thanks for joining us.
Joy, thanks for having me. Much respect. Always love catching up with you.
Yes, it's good to see you again. You were on the herd yesterday, giving us a little bit of information on what it's like inside the bubble, which I really want a different name for the bubble, but I haven't come up with a better term for it.
It's got to be Disney brand, right? Because we're in Disney. I mean, I've been doing like It's a Small World after all, a whole new world, Aladdin.
Very good.
Magic carpet ride. I mean, what other cliche or Disney phrases can we come up with here?
Well, so you were there through the entirety, right? As long as this is going on?
Joy, it's fluid because my colleague Jeff Zilgett, he also covers the NBA with me. In theory, we're planning to split the trip because it's a long trip. But there is also a chance I might have to be here the long haul. I'm at least here for the beginning of it, and then I think like with everything going on in the world, it's just you see how it plays out, take it one day at a time, and I'm prepared for anything.
But so that said, you've mentally prepared for the possibility that you're there through the championship.
Without a doubt. And I got to give my employer today a lot of credit. Like there was zero pressure of like feeling like you're obligated to go. I mean, they're obviously sensitive to health, to any personal obligation, just being there the whole time. And look, there's no such thing as anything risk-free. The NBA has kind of characterized this as the best of bad options. But for me, I've been taking it seriously. It's all real. You got to wear masks. You got to respect social distancing rules. But I felt like, as long as I'm there, I'm almost in a safer environment than anywhere else because I'm getting tested every day. I'm quarantined for a week. Once I'm out of quarantine, I can't really go anywhere much except for the practice facility and games. And so I think if a worst case scenario happens, I would be under the best supervision because there's a lot of health officials here and I'm going to be tested every day. So
yeah, you're kind of in the safest place in the world to be in right now.
Yeah. How about this? The safest place on earth. Is that
okay? So you're in the safest place on earth. But you are like this. It's really, I have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing, any of the reporters that are in the bubble, and obviously the players who are going into this because, we're all dealing with this pandemic and the anxiety of obviously possibly catching it or giving it to someone else and, the economic pressures of it and everything else. But there's a huge mental health aspect to being quarantined on top of all of those other anxieties. I mean, you're going to be in this room, not to add any kind of daunting energy to you, but I do think it's crazy. Like I would really have to mentally prepare myself to go into quarantine in a hotel room for 7 days.
Yeah, no, it's a very real issue. And thankfully for me, I mean, look, everyone's been going through different struggles during this pandemic. So it's not like, every day is great. But for the most part, at least for me, I mean, I'm blessed that I've been fully healthy. Family, friends have been healthy. I'm still working, got a full-time job. So that certainly helps. But on top of that, I've tried over the years, even before the pandemic, to do a lot of things that kind of help with mental strength and just getting through things. So just exercising regularly, dieting, just meditation, Christian faith, all that good stuff, being grateful for the good in the world. And, not by being naive to like all the things that are bad, but trying to put everything in the perspective where you're not downplaying the bad because it's all real, but you're also trying to be in tune of there's still a lot of good things. So I think with that, because I've already been kind of stuck in quarantine in LA where, I'm allowed to go outside, but I'm mostly just at my place working, doing Zoom calls. This transition's been fairly seamless. Like the only difference is I can't go outside of my room. Like I am on the whims of the NBA folks delivering the meals. And that's been a little bit of an inconvenience because of the timing. But, as I was telling Colin and you the other day, like those things almost don't matter because we're in a pandemic and the inconveniences, that's just a theme we're all going through. And I've found, at least for me, is like if you just plow through those inconveniences, like somehow it all kind of sorts out and you got through that day and that's a win and you move on to the next one. So, so far so good, but you just don't know how this is all going to play out. It's unprecedented.
It is. And for the players too, they're all obviously dealing with everything that you're dealing with as well, but they have a little more flexibility to go to practice, and they have some activities and stuff that the NBA has set up. I think for as far as the players being able to be mentally locked in, I think for the first, basically until it gets to the first round of the playoffs, it's not going to be easy, but at least it's going to be like, this is a different experience. We're all going through this together. We want to get back in shape. So we're focusing on actually being able to play basketball again. And, they have been quarantined with their families or whoever for a couple months now. So it's kind of a nice break to get into something different and get back to playing basketball. Is that kind of the energy that you're feeling from the people that you've talked to there?
Yeah, I'm feeling some of that energy, but I'm also kind of feeling, the dreaded expectation is because since this pandemic hit, there's always new things that come up. So I think they're also anticipating having to make do with whatever those circumstances are. So I think it's a healthy dose of cautious optimism. And, I think with all this, there's so many question marks of how this is going to play out. Can the NBA successfully do it? But I know from their preparation, going through the 113-page health and safety protocols, they have covered all of the obvious bases, the blind spots you never even thought of. Health officials think the same way. And, Jeff Silge and I gave it to these health officials because I'm not this medical expert, right? And they were saying this is the most comprehensive document they've ever seen, like even more than what they've seen in the government level. And I mean, that's not a good praise for how the government's responded. But as far as the NBA, I think that they've done all they could. But, this pandemic has had a way of still, defeating and navigating around well thought out plans. So you just never know.
So we got news yesterday that Russell Westbrook tested positive, which we had Doug Gottlieb on the show. Colin and I were kind of walking through what Doug was inferring that the rumors were, why Westbrook and Harden hadn't come to the bubble yet. Colin didn't quite get there as quickly as I did as far as to what Doug was inferring. But then a few moments later, Westbrook said that he did in fact test positive. What are you hearing about Harden?
Well, we're not naive. You can connect the obvious dots, but until you don't, at least for me, I don't think it's fair for them to speculate, but he hasn't been here, right. And neither has Luke Bonamute. The Rockets, they're acknowledging, look, you're losing your two stars right now, but Mike D'Antoni, the Rockets coach, has been clinging to how the calendar is now, where in theory, they have time to be able to get them in the bubble in time for the season starts, and it's not going to be significant. And that's one of the things that the NBA deserves credit for, how it's structured, how it would resume the season. They were anticipating a combination of positive tests, injuries, just different circumstances that would complicate these things. And so that's why they had testing start June 23rd, that first round. So in theory, for anyone test positive, they have that opportunity to join the team to go to Orlando. And for the ones that still aren't out of quarantine, they stay put, so they're not compromising the bubble in Orlando. That's in Russell Westbrook's case, right? He's tested positive, wish him all the best, but he hasn't compromised that side because he didn't fly to Orlando. Now, there were two other players that did test positive, and they were in Orlando, but they never left quarantine. They were always in their room. So they're going back. So I think you could make the argument that as much as you don't want these situations to happen, it has also showed that the NBA system has worked, right? So I think for when we're breaking down with basketball, I'm very mixed on it. It hurts the Rockets, no doubt, but to what extent? I think that they're going to be back in time for the season, but even though both of those players are very well conditioned, you're losing 5-on-5, and that it does not, you can't replicate that even if you're being in good condition, right? But I think the reality is other teams are going through this as well, that I think it's a rough analogy, but you almost have to look at every team's depth chart right now like the stock market. Like, it's going to be erratic for better and for worse every single day. And so to get into these definitive conclusions, it's hard. Now, that being said, where I will draw the line is once the season starts, then these depth charts will matter. And if there is a significant injury with a star player, then that changes the dynamic. But when you're having an injury like to Rajon Rondo or anyone else, there's still time for them to make up ground. And there's also awareness that you don't wish this on anyone, but other teams are going through other stuff too. So it kind of cancels itself out to some degree.
So that being said, I've maintained that, I'm picking the Clippers because I picked the Clippers at the beginning of the season. And I do think that they have a great deal of depth this year.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible to predict who will win this championship because there's so many factors. Now, hypothetically, right, everyone stays healthy and there's no mid-season or beginning of the finals positive test that, wrecks everything, which is what we're all hoping for. Hypothetically, I think we can look at this championship. Obviously, it's going to be different, but it's not going to be something where, like, it's an asterisk type of season. Because then we're still evaluating all these teams, all dealing with the same situation and coming back with mostly the same players that they had before the season ended. Obviously, Avery Bradley and, Rondo exceptions. But if a team like that we weren't expecting, right, wins a championship this year, because there's a multitude of those kind of circumstances affecting the best teams, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Bucks, will we look at this season differently? Will we look at this championship differently?
Yeah, Joy, you hit a very good distinction because I'm in the camp that right now, whoever wins the championship shouldn't get an asterisk. It's an explanation point because there's so many challenges. But if there is a situation where, like, a team, their starting lineup, heaven forbid, or there's a multitude of players that either get hurt or a positive test, that changes everything. Now, if it's kind of even across the board, hey, there's some injuries here, there's some tests there, it's almost this feeling like, hey, we're all in this together.
Right.
So I think you do draw a line there, and no doubt the team, you hesitate to put this in the universe because this is people's health, but, like, if that worst case scenario happens for a team,
right,
no doubt they are going to be having this, well, what if, and this isn't fair. But I think if it's the anticipated, hey, it's even across the board, then it should be considered, hey, everyone won this fair and square. You don't need to put an asterisk or qualifiers. This was a tough thing to navigate, and all is well that ends well.
So Colin and I were having this discussion earlier, and I don't know how to feel about it because I don't know everyone's situation. So I will only speak for myself, right? But Chris Middleton and some other players have said, like, they haven't touched a basketball in a couple months. And I'm like, I'm trying to think from my perspective, like, what would I do in that situation? Because, like, look, we're not talking about the average guy here. I mean, I'd love to go rent a beach house to quarantine in Malibu, but
sign me up.
Right, but I'm not rolling like that. But if I had it like that, that's where I would quarantine, right? Like, for my own mental health, for the people around me. Like, if I can improve my quarantine situation because I have the ability to do that while also doing my job, right, then I'm going to do that. So it's kind of weird to me to hear, like, a lot of players haven't been able to work out because it's like, you could get in a car and have gone to one of these states where it was open, or just rent a house where you are, for a couple months that has a court. Like, there are mansions all over this country that have come equipped with full basketball courts, or at least a space where you could put in a basketball court. So it does seem kind of weird to me that some of these guys haven't touched a basketball. Are they exaggerating, or am I being judgy?
No, I think it's all depending on the circumstances here. for people who didn't literally touch a basketball, yeah, like that's BS. What are you doing with the downtime? Like you got to be ready.
Right.
So it's a matter of, I don't fault anyone that, you got safety concerns, you got family obligations.
Sure.
So like, the idea of, hey, just moving to a state or getting a house, that's tough, but you can still train within the confines of social distancing quarantine. So the person's conditioning should be at least, good enough to work out, at a gym and you don't feel winded. Basketball court's different. Now, not to be able to shoot, that is a little bit different, but you can still have a basketball in your hand at your place, doing some ball handling, doing some virtual stuff. So for any player, I don't sense that this has been the case, but it is a large league. If there's been any player that's just been chilling and they haven't been working out, like shame on them. Like that's BS. But, I think that there is a clear division between the superstars and the role players that either, have the means to have their own private court.
Right.
They have larger space than, a lot of guys in the NBA who frankly don't have that. And,
well, sure, like everyone has different. I'm talking about specifically like Chris Middleton said that he didn't touch a basketball for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, I'm not flying with that. He shouldn't have been touching a basketball.
Right, like I'm like, me and Colin were like, I don't know, I don't want to be judgy. Like maybe he has a kid that has a pre-existing condition or something, but I'm like, I would still find a way to like go work out for 2 weeks at a place that had a court and then quarantine or something like. Again, I don't know his situation, but it's, we all know what everybody makes, unfortunately. So it's kind of like, I don't know.
For sure. Like I'm totally fine. Like players aren't relocating because of safety and everyone has families, but everyone can do some sort of quarantine workout at their place. And then if there's something outside their vicinity, whatever. The interesting thing about the NBA, like just in general, not even during this pandemic is, unless you're a star player, a lot of guys where they're staying, it's a rental apartment because it's such a fluid league. Like guys are getting trained or traded. And if they're buying a house, like just imagine how many times a role player might get traded. All of a sudden you have all these properties you're not using.
Totally. And why would you, I don't even think, because we were talking about this at the beginning, like most of the, veterans or, guys with big contracts probably have courts at their house. And I'm like, not really. Like I want to build the house of my dreams. I want it to be like an oasis. I want to get away from work. I have access to as many facilities as I want. Why would I need to put a facility in my house? You're talking about like Shaq, Kobe, LeBron level stuff. Like I don't imagine most guys have a whole court in their house.
Yeah, for sure. So where I would draw the line with that is totally understand if guys haven't had the chance to shoot.
Right.
No excuse for not handling the ball and just getting a workout. And I mean, you can do that easily. My place in Playa del Rey, I could easily work out every day, which I have been. Like, you can figure it out.
Well, good for you. I've been trying to do that every day. I've had waves. I'm like, 1 week I'm good, and the next week I'm like, I don't think so. But it's not my job, right? It's not my job. I don't get paid to work out. If I get paid to work out, then I would be doing it. I've been doing my actual job every day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you got the morning thing to go to the studio. Like, it's tough doing that. I mean, it's easier when you're just staying at home the entire day. Like, there's times I can do a full set of push-ups and sit-ups, like, in between phone interviews or something like that,
I try to remind myself because, like, I'm going to do a 4-minute song worth of abs every day, right? Like I know I have 4 free minutes.
Yeah.
So if I don't do that, I'm being like, it's an official lazy day. So I've been pretty good with that. So I'm like, you can lay on the floor and do 4 minutes of abs. I don't even know if that's helping anything, but like mentally, I'm like, at least I did something.
Anything helps. And like my little cheat code I've done is like, I'll either play music, I'll like play DVR shows, like while I'm doing that, or like play a podcast. And I feel like I'm being distracted and like productive in multiple ways, and then it's like, this is amazing.
I'm crushing it. So the big question one of the many big questions, but we're seeing some sports come back, right? MLS is back, golf is back, NASCAR's been back, horse racing has been back, UFC's been back, and I've really not had. Baseball's a little echoey for my taste, but I don't care because I just want to see sports. So it really doesn't. I'm not one of those people that's like, I can't believe there's going to be no fans there. Like, wear a mask, make it work, okay? I'm not concerned about fans being there at this point. Bigger picture. But I do think the NBA, out of all the sports, because it is so intimate of a game, you have fans literally courtside. The energy and the sound of the crowd is just a part of the game. They were going to be the ones who would be most up against it by not having fans there. Also, you know, they talk about it all the time during March Madness. You know, they have these games in these giant arenas, and the depth perception is different when you're playing in a bigger arena or a smaller arena, or you're playing in a gym, a high school gym, or you're playing in an NBA arena. So for shooters, it matters as well. Do you think it's really going to affect the game? Obviously, emotionally, mentally, you know, having fans there cheering you on and all this stuff. We know that's going to affect everybody to some degree until they get used to it, and then it's, you know, it'll be different. But do you actually think that that part of it, like the depth perception, the different environments, the sound, all of that's really going to change the game, like the performance?
I think opening weekend it will, because of just the awkwardness and getting used to it and all that. And so, you know, I was asking this question of coaches, and they were saying, you know, a lot of times during the playoffs, Frank Vogel, the Lakers coach, was saying a lot of times during the playoffs, you know, I'm shouting plays from the sideline because the crowd noise is so loud. And now he feels like, oh, I got to whisper it because the other team and the live feed's going to pick it up, and maybe I'll start holding a clipboard NFL style and cover my mouth, right? So, like, it's going to be little things like that. It's going to be, you know, a lot of the benches are going to try to, like, create fan energy to replicate, hey, there's no one in the stands. So that's going to be awkward the first weekend, and then I think everyone will just accept and feel like, you know what, it's out of my system. We're here to hoop. I think the lingering things that will go on is the conditioning level, because even for the guys who've, to what you were saying earlier, they're working out, they're shooting basketball, like they're still going to be out of shape, or they're still going to be rusty. And you just wonder, like, how long of a process will that be? Because a lot of these teams, like, they don't want this to be a boot camp this week. Like, they don't want to run these guys into the ground because then they're going to get hurt.
Right.
So as much as the coaches want them to, hey, let's start running some laps, doing some wind sprints, like, they also want to taper it. So it's going to be this, like, gradual process where, you know, guys are going to be fatigued, and, you know, some guys will have some knick-knacked injuries. So there's going to be new lineup combinations. It's just going to be kind of messy, but I'm of the opinion that because of where we're at in the state of the world, and, you know, for NBA fans in particular, they haven't seen a game, I think that they will appreciate that there's at least a product on the floor, as long as the teams are trying. Like, it's almost like this respectful feeling that, you know what, everyone's having their own sort of hardships, but we're in this together, and as long as you're just trying to plow through, that's all that matters. I think the danger is if, for the teams that suddenly become mathematically eliminated, will they just start not giving a damn and not playing at all? And then that's where there's this slippery slope of the product just looks really bad.
Yeah. I don't anticipate that there'll be a point where players will just stop trying, because they haven't played in so long.
Yeah,
and, you
that's
know,
a good point.
I personally, like you, I've never stopped working, so, which I'm super grateful for, because I know a lot of people that haven't been working. And it's just, if it was taken away from me for a couple months, like, I wouldn't care if I had to work every day. You know, I just would, I would rather burn myself out on it, even if, like, no one was hearing it, in which case, like, someone's mathematically eliminated, just to stay sharp for next year. But we'll see. There's a lot of stuff up in the air. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I hope that you stay safe, and honestly, like, you're a part of history. So, you know, you're definitely going to be in some documentaries like 10 years from now. So that's cool. You know, like, you're in the bubble, so you're a part of it now.
Man, you're clairvoyant here. We got to save this footage for the documentary of your prediction here. But I'll take it, Joy, and it's much respect for your work that you did with Colin, but just, you know, you giving a really good voice with what's going on in the world with, all the efforts that the NBA and everyone else is trying to do to address racism and everything going on. So much respect for you being a well-needed voice in that conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, stay safe. Try to have some fun. Maybe pick up a new show. I never made it all the way through The Wire, so I'm doing that right now.
Nice. I love that show. The show I picked up during this time, real quick. I got through all 3 seasons of Ozark. I absolutely loved it.
Excellent.
It was a lot of WTF moments, if you know what I mean, but in a good way.
Ozark is so good. Did you watch True Detective?
I did not. I did.
Oh my God, what a blessing I'm giving you. Okay, True Detective, season 1.
Giving me new things to watch. I did Ozark. I did Tiger King because, everyone was doing it.
That seems like a year ago.
I know. That was like early pandemic where it didn't seem like it would be this bad, but here we are.
Oh my God, listen, True Detective, season 1, it's really dark, so I'm warning you now. It's dark content. But Matthew McConaughey, Woody Harrelson, performance of a lifetime. Matthew McConaughey just lives his life as the character in True Detective now.
Oh, nice. I
don't think he's ever gotten out of character, but don't bother with any of the other seasons. Season 1 is the best ever. You'll love it, and it's 8 episodes, so easy.
I'll mark it down on the to-do list.
Yeah, let me know what you think. But thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
You're well.
Thanks.